BangTheBook.com, lots of stuff going on. We're going through and previewing every college football bowl game, so you can head on over and check that out. Daily NHL, college basketball, NBA, whole bunch of stuff for the NFL. Another UFC event this weekend, so we'll preview that over at the website. Once golf rolls back around after the new year, we'll get back to our golf previews. A lot of stuff going on over at the website on a daily basis, so make sure you head on over to BangTheBook.com and check all of that out. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. One guest on the program here today, that is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
Going good, Adam. How you doing, pal?
Doing very well, buddy. Appreciate your time as always here. Thank you so much for joining me. And
hey, before we do the NFL, would you kill me if I just the last thing we said last week, and you just mentioned it, and I'm kind of sad because it's gone, but it's not gone for long. But on the golf front, last week, we talked about that President's Cup, and hats off because that thing actually got some luster to it now. It was great golf. It was competitive. It was exciting. And what we talked about on the podcast at the tail end last week was the Americans and that travel, that they were going to be in trouble in the beginning of that thing. And we had mentioned the one matchup on the first day, nice plus price with Sung Jae Im. And I'm telling you, there's a takeaway from the President's Cup. Remind me that when we start talking golf, there are three big takeaways. I burned a lot of money with Sung Jae Im last year. But there are three guys, Sung Jae Im, Cameron Smith, and Tony Finau are going to be guys that are going to go and be propelled to have a great 2020 season because of what they went through, how they came through, and those positive experiences are going to make us money next year. I just want to make sure I didn't want to let golf fall through the cracks because there's a real money-making opportunity with those three guys. In fact, the Australian PGA this week, Cameron Smith, I think, will get the best of Adam Scott. Cameron Champ's there. He has an outside shot. But you watch the springboard for Cameron Smith, and Tony Finau specifically. I think they kick doors down now, not cash checks.
Finau maybe to get one of the majors this year?
It wouldn't shock me. And I mean that with sincerity because, he's been involved in some and been there. And I think it has played well. Ran into Koepka on a bunch of occasions. But, I just think it's, golf is such a between-the-ears thing. The experiences these guys gained as young guys, Finau's a little older than the other two. Cameron Im's only 21. He's an ATM machine, but he always has a bad hole or two. And I just think he goes to the next level.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. The quick takeaways, I didn't get to watch too much of it. I was actually in New Orleans for the weekend. But Justin Thomas in these international competitions is amazing. And Tiger Woods again. All the stuff this guy's been through, to be able to play at the level he did, here in 2019 and cap it off with such a strong President's Cup, a lot of fun to see.
Well, actually, there are a lot of takeaways. In Tiger is one of the very big ones. The only problem you have with Tiger is 1 week to the next, how's his body holding up? But the one thing about him of late, he's got the love of the game back, and you know what? Now he may have taught some of the guys that were in the room with him how to do it, but the intimidation factor for Tiger is back. And he's hitting fairways. That has been his problem, health and hitting fairways off the tee in the last decade. He is driving the ball maybe better than he ever has. And believe me, the Masters is in play again for him. But again, it comes down to that week. What's the weather? If it's cold and dank, his body just doesn't loosen up. But if he's feeling right, he's right there at the top of the list again. It's amazing.
Well, we'll have a lot of golf stuff to talk about here after the new year. Some early tournaments, couple in Hawaii, and then we got the California swing where a lot of guys tend to play very well in California. So hopefully we can get the golf season off on a good note here, at least the 2020 portion of the golf season on a good note here after the new year. But speaking of the weekend, let's take a look back here at week 14 in the NFL. Obviously, the playoff races really taking shape. You've got a couple of division battles, but for the most part, we got a pretty good idea of who's going to the postseason and who's going home. Some of the major takeaways from week 14 from you, Brian.
Play calling, bad beats, lucky wins. I mean, Tennessee, I'm telling you, I've watched it all year long. I mean, you can laugh at fantasy football all you want. I've got Derrick Henry on the team. And I'm telling you, if they just force-fed this guy the ball, he'd get 1,800 yards rushing. But they're play calling, and I know that because he's there, that's why the play action and it's works for Tannehill. But when he runs the ball all the way down to the 3, first and goal at the 3, in a tie game, in a game that's for first place in the division, why are you throwing a 100-mile-an-hour pass in a tight passing lane and getting it picked off? Give Henry the football. I mean, their play calling, I've watched it all year long, probably cost him a playoff berth.
Yeah, it's been one of those things in the NFL. I mean, you had the 2 bad beats here this past weekend. You get a lot of bad coaching decisions, bad punting decisions. Last night, I mean, Indianapolis was probably going to get freight trained in that game anyway, but you're on the road against the Saints at home, Drew Brees going for a record, and you're punting twice on the plus side of the 50? Like, why? I mean, why give them the football? Your only hope in that game is to go out there and score as many points as possible. And you're giving up the football willingly, and you lose 34-7. You got exactly what you deserved. So, man, is that frustrating week in and week out trying to bet this league?
No, it is. I mean, it's funny, though, and some of the stuff we'll talk about today, though, is there are 3 Saturday games, and scoreboard watching is an actual thing now. And, believe me, the Colts were probably up against it to begin with. But with San Fran losing to Atlanta, not that New Orleans wasn't going to, be all jacked up for Brees and another Monday night game and a record. But they're sitting there going, wait a minute. After the heartbreak of losing to the Niners kind of give it right back where New Orleans is playing for a bye. And that opportunity to have the road to the Super Bowl go through New Orleans. Can Minnesota beat Green Bay? Certainly. And then you got the Seattle San Fran game. But anyway, New Orleans is sitting there going, okay, pedal to the metal here the last 3 weeks. And a bye is a big deal.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, I actually like Minnesota this week against Green Bay. Like Minnesota last week, they won and covered easily. I know you've been high on the Vikings here. You mentioned them a couple weeks in a row here as a team that you do really like. That's it. You've got the scoreboard watching, you've got the playoff races. Then also something else that was a takeaway from me for last week. The Browns losing at Arizona, just, must-win game, back absolutely up against the wall. No margin for error whatsoever. That's the effort you get out of the Cleveland Browns. San Francisco, terrible spot. You shouldn't lose to Atlanta as a double-digit favorite. You can understand why they would have trouble winning that game by margin. But, bad spot, tough loss. We'll see how they bounce back now on a short week. The Rams,
I mean, how about refs
getting blown out, right? The Rams getting blown out. They're done now. I mean, they can't go to the playoffs. They went to the Super Bowl last year. What do you get from them the next 2 weeks? So that's the thing here, week 16 and week 17. These teams that aren't going anywhere now and maybe showed you some tough things last week, you've got to play kind of psychologist with them more than looking at the matchup.
No, there's no doubt. And again, getting ahead of the number and numbers that will run and overreactions. Okay, Dallas 2.5 at Philly. Yeah, I get it. Dallas played one great game. And Philly's been life and death. I give Philly full marks to injured, circle the wagons somehow, and find ways to win those close games to get to this point where they're going to play a game we've been talking about for the better part of a month. And then Jacksonville. I mean, you look at this game. I thought the Raiders were going to just boat race them, and it was dead wrong on it. And they were on the road to boat racing them. And then that place, there was a pall over it in the second half. It was the end of what was going on in Oakland. And the Raiders are going to win the game. And Carr's running out of bounds, kneels down, surrenders himself, clock should keep running, and the ref stopped the clock. I mean, the game's over, and the ref stopped the clock. Hell, what was the one game? Was it the Cowboys game? They even messed up the coin flip at the beginning of the game. How do we bet this stuff?
I don't know, because we're all nuts, I guess. I mean, I have no idea. And you know what? We've got 2 weeks and some important decisions from these coaches and these officials. And, we're going to decide, millions of dollars worth of revenue for the playoffs based on, these idiot coaching decisions and the officiating. And hey, I guess we're in for a wild ride here over the next 6-7 weeks here as the NFL winds down, of course, gets to the Super Bowl here in Miami coming up the first weekend of February. But let's go ahead and start taking a look ahead now to this week. And obviously, again, a lot of uncertainty with what's going to happen with some of these teams, some of these coaches, some of the decisions, but no uncertainty about the fact that Saturday's games are all important, all mean something, all could wind up being pretty decent here overall. We will start with the late game because we're going to go by rotation number here. Game 451, 452, the Rams and San Francisco in primetime. 49ers now a 6.5-point favorite in this one. And as I mentioned, the Rams now, they're just playing spoiler pretty much. They've got a very minuscule shot at making the playoffs. Total of 45 on this one. Do we get the San Francisco bounce back here, or do we get, the last stand from the Rams?
Well, I'll go back to last week to look ahead to this week, and I think we'd mentioned it. The days run together on me, pal. But I thought that was a horrible spot for the Niners last week. Atlanta has played hard for Quinn, but when you look at the schedule that San Fran had to play in the back-to-back, the Ravens and the Saints, and then you're coming home and the Rams are in the on-deck circle. And by the way, they were playing that game. They had no idea. The Rams were getting killed at the same time they were playing. So when they took the field, the Rams were still a thing. And that was just a horrible spot for San Francisco. No knock on them. Great game, crazy finish. I think Atlanta's playing hard. I trust the short answer is I trust San Fran a lot more than I trust the Rams. The Rams play calling, I got to be honest with you, bud. I don't know. McVay was last year's genius, and ever since the Super Bowl, that team was just had a malaise about them, and it was up and down and in and out. Their play calling is just atrocious. I mean, I know in this day and age it's a passing league, but I mean, they just throw. You're not going to win. And you've got Gurley, and it was like, are they protecting Gurley? I mean, he had 5 carries. I think he had 1 yard on 5 carries. So they just completely abandoned the run. Yeah, you're not going to win. Being one-dimensional. It's nuts. I think the over's the play. I think over 45.5. San Fran's going to do what they do. The first game was low scoring, but I think this is a higher scoring game, especially if the Niners get the lead in this game. This could turn into a gong show.
Yeah, this is, something I've been talking about a lot with the 49ers over the last several weeks and was on the Falcons in the Super Contest and the Circa Million this past weekend. You can score on the 49ers right now because that defense is just gassed. I mean, they've been playing since week 4, and that defense has played a lot of emotional games where you've got a lot of guys, they're pass rushers. They're probably wearing down a little bit. There is a heightened sense of urgency for San Francisco. I think they need the bye week. Not to say that they're going to lose to a wild card team in the first round, but simply to say that they need a week off. They need a blow. And here, they're on a short week. If they had beaten Atlanta soundly, I'd be a little bit more worried about them covering a number in this situation. But I do think that there's a very good chance that they dig deep here and do what they need to do because the Rams, now you've got that hangover off of last week's loss that, again, effectively eliminated you from the playoffs. As you said, they're throwing the football a lot with Jared Goff, who is not good in the face of pressure, not good on the road, not worth what he's getting paid. So this is a Rams organization that's in a really weird spot right now, whereas I think San Francisco, even though they suffered that loss last week, and maybe that's a little bit of a humbling experience that does kind of refocus them a little bit. Again, as you said, the culture is better, the team is better, the talent is better, the coaching is better. I love Kyle Shanahan. It's 49ers or nothing for me here. I mean, it just has to be.
I can't disagree with anything you said. I'm comfortable with the points because the Rams, believe me, the Rams have so much skill, and Aaron Donald's a monster. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a football game. To me, especially these last 2 weeks of the year, it's like, who the hell wants to play? And that's a lot of what we're handicapping here. So even if they want to play, I could see it being high scoring. If they don't want to play, I could see it being even higher scoring.
I will say this, man. Between this game and the next one that we're going to talk about here, Buffalo and New England, my God, how many teaser tickets are going to be written on San Francisco and New England, both at a pick'em this week? It's going to be insanity.
Well, and you know what? To a degree, you almost look at something like that and make it part of your handicap and say, what's the deal? Who usually wins? Over the long haul, the house wins, right? So over the course of the weekend, you look at these 6.5, 7-point games, and the books are going to need one or two of them to go down, and it will take every teaser out. So buyer beware, and believe me, they would do a cartwheel if either the Rams or the Bills won on Saturday, because it would emulsify how many teaser tickets going into Sunday where people would have to start all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely part of the equation here, especially from a sportsbook standpoint. Something I'll probably talk about later in the week with Brent from DSI, sort of discussing that, especially with those Saturday games in focus here. But the middle game on Saturday is game 453, 454, Buffalo and New England, 4:30 Eastern kickoff up at Foxborough. New England favored by 6. There's a couple of stray 6.5s out there. Very, very low total on this game of 38.5. Not sure if weather is going to be a factor. I'll look that up here in a minute. It's Foxborough in December. It probably could be. What do you think about your Bills here getting 6, Brian?
Well, the under, I think, is a great starting point. And I will tell you this, but I think, knock on wood, have had a real good read on the Bills from an intangible perspective and maybe things that people never take into account. And the only reason I'm saying that is not that I'm like Einstein or anything. It's just that I watch the Bills, religiously. And to build the point, I watched the game Sunday night, and I just kind of laughing. I said, Chris Collinsworth, the way he's talking about the Bills, I'm like, have you ever seen them play? Talking about Trey White. This guy's an emerging super. He's not emerging nothing. He's been doing it since the day he came in the league. He should have been Rookie of the Year over Lattimore. He should have made the Pro Bowl last year. And that's why the Bills were so dangerous on Thanksgiving Day, because it was their first national exposure for these guys, Poyd, Hire, and Trey White specifically, or guys should have been in the Pro Bowl last year. It was their chance to be seen around the league. And then I would even throw one at you. I almost fell over. They had a player prop for the Bills game Sunday night. John Brown is a 1,000-yard receiver. And, okay, they play receiving yards for John Brown. I'm like, okay, let's take a look at it. I'd make it at 81, 82 and a half. They hung 55. It got bet down to 53. I almost fell over. You got to be kidding me. He's Allen's go-to guy. He got 99 yards and dropped one pass, or he'd have had 160. So a lot of this is that nobody knows the Bills. Oh, Josh Allen, he's inaccurate. Well, you know what? Allen himself said, all I used to think about was how do I throw a touchdown. Now, because they have Beasley, all he's thinking about is getting first downs. And don't screw the game up, because that defense is so good. So it's amazing. People are just learning about this team. And I'll throw the one other intangible at you, and I could be wrong in the grand scheme of things. Could it be a letdown because they won, they beat Pittsburgh, and they got in the playoffs, and the odds are 90%. They're the 5 seed. Is Miami beating New England next week with the division on the line? Let's cut to the chase, right? The odds are the Bills are the 5 seed, and they're probably going to play Houston. So they can walk in. They got nothing to lose, basically. But I think there's an intangible here. And I'm not burying the Patriots. You got Belichick. You got Brady. They always have done it. You go back to the day where you got Troy Brown playing on both sides of the ball. These guys are brilliant. They find a way. But this offense, don't be fooled by that Bengals score. The Bengals it was a 10-10 game. The Bengals were going 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, driving to take the lead, and they don't get it. And then Dalton throws a pick six, and the game gets away from them. This New England offense, prior to that game, they've needed trick plays to get the ball in the end zone. The only reason they beat the Bills the first game was a block punt for a touchdown, and Allen got hurt in the middle of the third quarter. They had the ball at the end with Barkley driving to win the game, and the Patriots got an interception. I think the intangible thing on this game is I really believe the Bills are going to say, New England could go on a run, and the Bills made the playoffs, but they're building towards something. I swear to you, I think Buffalo makes this, fellas, this is the game. We've been sick of this for how many years? This is the pass the torch game, okay? Whatever. I mean, this year it's probably still New England. But I really believe they show up here like this is a statement game, and it's about to be our turn, and there's a new team you're going to have to deal with. And I really think that's how the Bills come into Foxborough with that mindset for this game.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say that. And I mean, this is the 5th road game in 7 weeks for the Bills. So maybe a little bit of fatigue could start to set in for this team. But again, you're playing the Patriots. So you're going to be focused on this one.
Buddy, I just, in a weird way, they're 6-1 on the road. They play better on the road, which sounds nuts in the NFL. But they are really good at bonding together. And they play a simpler game at home. I think they try to do too much and get too cute. And, they've only got one road loss, and it was at Cleveland, and it was a game they pissed away. They had the ball, horrible clock management at the end of the game. I mean, they ruined the day they lost that Cleveland game because otherwise this game's for the division.
Yeah, and I think something else about this game, too. I mean, if I'm Buffalo, right, like I treat this game like it's the dress rehearsal game for the playoffs. I treat this like it's week 3 of the preseason. And then next week, I punt the hell out of that game against the Jets. I don't play anybody that's remotely banged up. I don't really worry about beating Adam Gase or anything like that because, like you said, they're probably going to stay in that 5 slot no matter what. So I go balls out here, man. I go all in. Like you said, maybe you try to treat this as some sort of torch passing game. And what's going to be really interesting to me, I want to see what happens with this line because sharp bettors out there do not like the Bills. They do not like this team. They do not like the strength of schedule. They do not like the fact that they're 10-4, but they're plus 69 in point differential, which isn't all that nice in the eyes of a lot of the people out there. People don't like the Bills, despite getting that nice win over Pittsburgh last weekend. And all the talk coming out of that game is, man, Devlin Hodges was terrible. Devlin Hodges was so bad. He's so bad at throwing the football. It was nothing positive about the Bills. It was, man, this Pittsburgh offense blows. Does the narrative ever change on Buffalo?
No,
I don't know.
It won't. And honestly, that's good. Let it, because you know how teams are in all sports. They gravitate to stuff like that, bulletin board stuff, whatever it takes, whatever floats your boat. But with that defense, they're literally in every game. And the thing that really does fly under the radar is Allen's record through 2 years, when the game is on the line in the fourth quarter, I don't have it in front of me, but it's ridiculous. Fourth quarter comeback wins. On the drive, they need him to do it. Other than the Browns game, he's come through. I shouldn't say that. The Ravens stopped them, too, at the tail end. But anyway, the one other little thing I would throw in, and it is a huge, huge deal. The first time these two teams played, again, they terrorized Brady, terrorized him. And the block punt changed the game, and then Allen was hurt. But in that first game, Devin Singletary was hurt. Singletary did not play in that game, and the Bills could not run the ball. This kid is good. I mean, you talk about opening a lot more doors for your offense when he's in there opposed to Frank Gore. So that's another one that if you want to go back to the first game, his absence was a killer.
And I'll throw one more other thing at you here. You know, you've got a New England team, right? This Patriots team is third in the NFL in pass attempts with 558. They are 25th in yards per play with 5.0. The other teams that are up there around them, Atlanta, 588 pass attempts. They're 16th in yards per play, and we all know that they're, they've had their share of issues here so far this year.
A lot, though, a lot of that. I mean, I'm not. You're right over the course of the long haul, but a lot of those yards for Atlanta, that's when teams are up 21 and they go to the too deep garbage and they give them that 15-yard underneath pass and they go down the field and get a garbage touchdown.
Right. No, yeah, I understand that. The point I'm really illustrating here is that, generally speaking, I mean, this is obvious. This is a common sense thing. You throw the ball further than you run the ball. So for the Patriots to be third in pass attempt, really tied for second in pass attempts, and be, well in the bottom 10 in yards per play, just speaks to how bad this offense truly is. And to try and get margin against Buffalo looks difficult.
It's unbelievable, Adam, honestly. Again, I mean, is it going to shock you that they figure something out and find ways? But this looks like being at home is massive for New England in the playoffs. Believe me, they got a lot to play for here. But they cannot run the football. And the wide receivers, okay, Gronk's gone, right? Massive difference. But none of these wide receivers are open. They can't run the ball. Their savior is James White. He's like the X-Factor. If I'm the Bills, if James White's out there, I'm spying him. He's the only threat they got.
Yeah, pretty much anymore. That's really the way that it's gone for this team. I mean, Edelman still gets his, but, he's not creating a ton of explosive plays or anything. So
but he's really banged up too, though. He got nothing last week. They didn't need him last week.
Yeah. Yeah, the Patriots I think they're vulnerable this week. I really, truly do. I mean, I'll wind up on the Bills likely in the contest, barring some sort of, big line move down on this game. And again, I think you just have so much skepticism about Buffalo because of the schedule that they played that I don't think this line moves down a whole lot. Maybe you see a 5.5, but right now the 6s are largely juiced on New England. So maybe this thing even goes up a tad. I don't know.
And I will tell you this, having watched these guys forever and a day, I can see the Bills winning this game and losing to the Jets. And because it's the letdown thing, the Jets come in and your scoreboard watching, and all of a sudden, this is a next week thing. We'll see how this pans out. But then you're looking at the scoreboard, New England's up 17 on Miami. I can see the Bills losing outright. It's probably a 9 or a 10-point favorite next week against the Jets.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that's the thing. If Buffalo finds a way to win this game, they can't sit anybody next week because they're going to try for that division and hope for the best. But, again, obviously the second half could look a little bit different in that one. And week 17 is catered very well to second half and live betting, by the way. One other game here on Saturday, 4:55, 4:56. Houston and Tampa Bay, enormous win for the Texans over the Titans here this past weekend. Nice win for Tampa Bay. That line shot up like a rocket against Detroit. They wind up covering all the numbers in that blowout win. But they do lose Chris Godwin in the process. Part of the reason for the line move here with a flip favorite from Tampa Bay going -1.5 to +3, and a big reason for the total coming down from 53 to 50.5 is that Godwin injury for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking Godwin. There are a handful of guys that are, the Hopkins, Julio Joneses of the world. Wide receivers in the NFL can run fast and catch. So I'm not getting off Tampa Bay just because Godwin's out. I honestly, you come out of a game last week. It's a sandwich game for Houston. You got Tennessee again next week. You better mind your business here. But Arians has these guys believing. Has Winston. Hey, every time he's taken the field, this guy's auditioning for next year. And I think he's made the case where at the beginning of the year is a foregone conclusion. That's the end of it. But I think now he's probably earned himself a short-term deal. I don't trust him long-term. But I think with Arians and the points they've been putting up, you got to give him credit. The thing is, he's still a train wreck that can make a bad decision and give the other team instant points or a short field. Even though Godwin's out and Evans is nicked up, it's an out-of-conference game. It's a sandwich game. I don't know. How do you? It's a high total, but I can't see anything other than up and down the field we go.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the weather situation's fine in Tampa Bay here this weekend, maybe some rain, maybe some wind driving this on the extended forecast. I don't know, but like you said, I mean, this feels maybe a little bit overreactionary because we know Tampa Bay cannot run the football. They've really never been able to run the football, since Warwick Dunn left or something like that. So, we know they're going to throw it. And, is Houston trying to be balanced? Is Houston trying to protect Deshaun Watson? They could, but they're pretty successful running the football themselves. So I think points probably could be in the offing here for this one, true.
Would you be overthinking it if you did anything other than play the over? What? Tampa's on an 11 out of 12. They're 11-1 to the over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right there in front of our face. Just play these guys over.
Yeah,
you
sure
can't make
like
it. You can't make it high enough.
No, that's true. Well, it seems like they did, considering that the openers come down from 53 to 50.5. So, yeah, maybe that line is high with that over streak, but at the same time, I mean, they could wind up flying over the total here in this one.
Here, Adam, they've scored 38 against the Lions, 38 against the Colts, 28 against the Jags, 35 against Atlanta. That's what they've scored. All right. Other than Atlanta, those other three offenses are hot garbage. I mean, Houston's going to get theirs.
Could you imagine how many points this Tampa Bay team? They already have 416. Could you imagine how many they'd have if they didn't have 33 turnovers on the year?
And a lot of those, up and down the field, and how the thing is, how many of those? That's the one thing you say. Oh, it's hard to predict turnovers. Sure, it is. Well, with Tampa, you almost have to expect them. The one thing is where do the turnovers happen? Because one turnover can derail an over. One, that you drive it down the field and you turn it over at the 2-yard line, that game dies. And then the other team moves the sticks 3 times and then they punt. One turnover probably is the difference in 21 points and a half. But with Tampa Bay, the turnovers that seem to occur are so egregious, it's either a short field or so bad that it's returned the other way, and the turnovers never lead to unders.
Something I will say real quickly here, one of the hallmarks of my handicap last week taking Tampa Bay was that the Lions came into that game with only 5 interceptions. So they're not a defense that forced a lot of turnovers. They're certainly not a defense that gets a lot of interceptions. They had one of Winston last week, and he threw for 459 yards. Houston only has 8 interceptions on the year, 17 total takeaways. So they also don't wind up with a whole lot of interceptions. So if you are trying to predict turnovers a little bit, some defensive backs, some secondaries just have a nose for the football. Houston doesn't seem to have that. So if Winston's not turning the football over, they are moving it, and they move it in chunks. So even with those injuries at wide receiver, again, it could be the over here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And the one other thing, like when you break this stuff down, and again, the analytics stuff, I want to play Russian roulette with 5 bullets. I'm an old guy. Whatever. It is what it is. But, the one thing that happens, it's just like common sense stuff. Tampa's got quick strike capability, right? I mean, they can do an 80-yard drive in 3 plays and took 1 minute and 8 seconds off the clock. What does that mean? I watched this with the Bills when they went to 4 straight Super Bowls with the no huddle. Up and down, bam, right, they scored. The defense goes right back on the field. Because they can score and score quickly, their defense is on the field so much they get tired. It's not just, boy, that one team, boy, are they really good. They can when they score fast, their defense gets tired.
Yeah, it's an excellent point there, and I guess we'll see what happens here with this game as we transition over to Sunday, game 463, 464, New Orleans and Tennessee. Saints field goal favorite, pretty much market wide out there. Total down a little bit from 51.5 to 50.5. Very crippling loss for Tennessee last week because not only did they fall out of the first place tie, they fell out of the top 6 spots. If the playoffs started today, Pittsburgh would get in by the tiebreaker of conference win percentage. So Tennessee here, very important game for them. New Orleans, 3-way tie atop the NFC, but they don't have the tiebreakers over Seattle or Green Bay, so they're 3rd right now. This game means a lot in Nashville on Sunday.
And they're both motivated. Obviously, the Saints would, if somehow the Rams beat the Niners, the Saints would be drooling, and that number may go through 3. I would say that would be the reaction. If the Rams upset the Niners Saturday, the Saints number goes through 3. So that would be the reaction that would happen on the board. They're both motivated. In Tennessee, it's one game. They blew it. But the bottom line is Henry is such a weapon. If you put 8 in the box, Tannehill with what he's working with Brown now, they can pass it over the top. They can punch it in the red zone unless they do stupid play calls, which they did and cost them a game. But Tennessee has in the last 9 weeks, they turned into a dead over team, and you got Brees on the other side of the football. And, Kamara, and by the way, New Orleans is finally healthy. You finally got Kamara back. And, oh, by the way, Drew Brees in Week 16 is a pretty fresh version of Drew Brees. That injury and what Bridgewater did for them could be a godsend when it's all said and done, because Drew Brees hasn't been, wearing that arm out for 16 weeks. He had quite the break. He is hitting his full stride right now.
Yeah, he is. And that's a really important thing, especially when you're talking about an older quarterback like him. I mean, that's a guy that's 40 years old now. He'll turn 41 the middle of January, and, hopefully his team's still playing, because it'd be nice to see him get another one. He seems like he does everything the right way. And, I'll be rooting for the Saints, especially with a lot of Buckeyes on the defensive side of things. But, in this game here specifically, not just what happens with the Rams in San Francisco, much like you and I were talking before the show here, Houston on Saturday. If Houston somehow loses that game to Tampa Bay, and again, that line, Houston -3, so it's not like it wouldn't be some ridiculous upset or anything. If Houston loses, all of a sudden Tennessee, their prospects look a little bit different for Sunday themselves. So this is one where I don't know if we see much movement in the lead up to the game, but maybe based on what occurs on Saturday, we could see this line move around quite a bit.
Well, there's the Saturday thing, honestly, and you're right, but I think the more realistic thing is, with in-game live wagering, this is one of those where you should be watching two games at the same time. If the Jets ever jumped on Pittsburgh, right? If the Jets got a 10-point lead on Pittsburgh at the end of one or halfway through the second quarter, bet Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's why, because that's the realistic way for them to get in, is for Pittsburgh to lose and for Tennessee to win, right? I mean, so Tennessee's probably, that's the game. They're focused on the Pittsburgh score. So if the Jets are beating Pittsburgh, that gives Tennessee a bounce in their step. And there are going to be other games of that ilk where if one thing's happening in one game, believe me, the other team sees that. And this happens every year. I mean, yeah. There was what was the game 2 years ago? It was the Miracle when the Bills were playing at Miami and Dalton threw the pass to knock the Ravens out. But throughout the course of that afternoon, the Bills were playing that game, and the Bengals were actually ahead of the Ravens. And the Bills they're looking at that. Okay, we got it. We got a shot. And they stepped all over Miami. So that game was it was never in doubt. Then Baltimore came back, took the lead, and then Dalton came back and won it. But they were watching the scoreboard and saw that Cincy was ahead, and it gave them this extra jump during the course of their game. There are going to be 6 of these scenarios that play out in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a game that doesn't have any of those scenarios of scoreboard watching anything else. Game 475, 476, Dallas and Philadelphia. Dallas wins. It's over. Philadelphia wins. They're still going to have to avoid some sort of landmine in week 17. But Dallas up from -2 to -2.5. Total down from 47.5 to 46.5. There is a 46 out there as well. Again, as games increase in importance, they tend to tighten up a little bit. Part of the reason probably why this total coming down some. But you and I were talking before the show about this one a little bit. With this line going up to 2.5 and maybe trending towards 3, is this too much of an overreaction to what Dallas did to the Rams last week?
It's nuts. Okay? I mean, this game is the definition of what has gone on in the last 2 to 3 years in the NFL, where a number just goes bonkers because of the last game that was played. That never happened before in the NFL. I mean, in a weird way, I know it hasn't been pretty, but to me, I give Philadelphia full marks. The fight, and they're not playing good football teams. They had one foot in the grave and another on a banana peel the last 2 weeks and didn't let it get away. Found a way, and they won the game because this has been all about for 5 weeks. Dallas is going to play Philly for the division. But they had to both do their part to get there, and they both kept losing and losing and losing. But because Dallas won the first one, Philly had to win. And they did, and it was ugly. But Dallas has one good game against the Rams, and all of a sudden you're telling me they're a 2.5-point road favorite? if Philly would have walked in and won that last week really easily, Philly's 1.5, 2. There's a 5-point swing because of what? Because of what you saw last week? It's nuts to me. Dallas could walk in and smash them, I guess. The number, from 1 week to the next, it's craziness. I think this number was Philly 1 Saturday.
Yeah, and there's a lot to try and unpack here about this game. I mean, look, playing Washington has not been easy here of late. Dwayne Haskins is looking better. This team under the interim Bill Callahan playing pretty well. They've been covering a lot of numbers. They've been a tough team to play against. You kind of go into this game a little bit not knowing what you're going to get from Haskins because, again, you don't have a lot of film on the guy. He's a young guy. He's kind of inconsistent. I think it's a little bit tough to game plan for Washington here, especially if something like Philadelphia happens where you've got this look-ahead situation. So Philly did what they had to do. They did wind up covering the number, of course, based on the one of the worst beats of all time that we saw at the end of that game.
Adam, Dallas's win was in week 15. Their first win against a team with a winning record. And you look at this number, you would have thought they beat the 85 Bears.
Well, and the funny thing, too, is all the money came in against Dallas last week until you got some really late buyback that kind of pulled that number down a little bit. But there was not a lot of confidence in the investment community in Dallas last week. And they come away with that win and that great performance. And like you said, now you get this big reactionary type of thing here. Philadelphia is the play. I mean, I don't know if I've got the stones to do it, but Philadelphia's got to be the play here, if anything.
Well, and the crazy thing, Dallas being the public team they are, but if Philly were to win this game, I mean, the number would be a lot different. But let's say, for argument's sake, the Niners end up the wild card coming out of the West. The Niners will go to Dallas and be a 4-point favorite. If Philly wins this game, the Niners would probably be a touchdown or a 7.5 at least point favorite, a road favorite in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And again, a lot of considerations here for this week. Glad we got to get through a lot of games. Brian will be getting through the Green Bay, Minnesota game over on our Bang the Book YouTube page as well with a video preview for Monday Night Football. So if you want some thoughts on that one, head on over to our Bang the Book YouTube page either later today or tomorrow. You'll be able to get a video there of that Monday Night Football contest. But before I let you go, Brian, we talk NHL all the time. Like I said, we probably won't be on next Tuesday. I'd be surprised if we wind up doing a show next Tuesday. But we got a big slate tonight. We had a big trade with Taylor Hall getting moved to Arizona. Then, of course, we got the holiday break coming up next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for that. So schedule a little bit condensed here in advance of the break. We got some transactions starting to happen. We got a team that's a $4 favorite tonight in Tampa Bay against Ottawa at some places. A lot going on in the hockey world right now.
Oh, man, I didn't see that. Look at that. Tampa's not playing good, bud. That's insane. That's just for giggles, I'd take Ottawa. Tampa's not playing well. There have been trends that have been just, kicking the tires. It's been amazing. Teams starting long road trips. That would be Montreal tonight. Want to get off to a good start. And teams' first game home from a long road trip. The air's out of the balloon. By the way, Montreal better win this game tonight at Vancouver. I'm not saying they will, but they're starting a 7-game road trip. Montreal, and they're a nice team, but they got a 7-game road trip right here. Their season could be defined with what goes on here in the next 2 weeks. And that's the nature of the NHL, how you can go up and down the ladder so quickly. Philly Philly's one of these, they play great for a while and then they play terrible. I don't trust them. 3-game road trip. They spit the bit the whole trip. Now first game home, and you got Anaheim coming in here catching 25 cents. And if I'm not mistaken, Anaheim is starting a 4-game road trip. I like Anaheim. I mean, it's the combination of two angles. There was the same scenario a couple of weeks ago in Vegas. Vegas first game home from a 4-game road trip. First game of a 5-game road trip for the Rangers. The Rangers walked in here and won 5-0. It's a scheduling play. Has nothing to do with who the two teams are. The goalie can change everything, but I'd be playing Anaheim all day long just on the combination of those two angles. Buffalo, Toronto tonight. There's been a thing that's gone on for the better part of a decade. Higher scoring games in Buffalo, lower scoring games in Toronto. Jack Eichel's the hottest player in the league. He's on a dead heater, 16-game point streak. But Freddie Anderson's been terrific, and they've gone with Olmark, who's now their number one. So I think the goalies actually could play really well tonight. I love the NHL. And then you get Taylor Hall, traded to Arizona. I got to believe he makes it to San Jose for the game tonight. And San Jose is an unmitigated disaster. And, Arizona gets a bounce in their step with this guy. Total on that game's only 5.5. Honestly, in that game, the goaltending's been so bad for San Jose, and I know Arizona's good, but they get a little spark with Taylor Hall. I go over the 5.5 in that game.
Excuse me. I'll tell you one that I'm kind of interested in here tonight. Columbus and Detroit. Columbus, they've got a little bit of a thing with Washington. I don't think Washington necessarily views it that way, but Columbus does. I mean, Columbus had Washington down 2-0 in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Artemi Panarin hits a goalpost. They could have went up 3-0. Washington goes down and scores, wins the next 4, winds up beating Columbus 4-2. That was 2 years ago before Columbus swept Tampa Bay last year in the first round. Columbus always gets up for that game. They win 3-0 last night as a big dog. Now they're taking money tonight in Detroit. And I know Detroit is absolutely horrible, but I'm curious to see, does Columbus use Korpisalo in a back-to-back? Do they have a letdown off that Washington game? That's kind of one that's on my radar tonight with a little bit of local flair for me.
Well, and what I would say to you is that, yes, they're god-awful, but the Red Wings have won 2 of their last 3. So you're in a mini window where they're, playing better and feeling a little bit better about themselves. And to answer your question, you got Merzlikins going tonight versus Bernier. And both goalies' save percentage is under 900. So I could see it. I could see the over. To be honest with you, with the backup going there. Bernier with a 7.92 mark. It's not so much his fault. It's just what's in front of them. But actually, if the air, and that's the one thing, and the goalie is always the great equalizer. But if there's a lack of intensity, Adam, in all sports, it shows up to me with lack of defense. So I could actually see goals in that Columbus-Detroit game.
Did you see Merzlikins confirmed? Or...
I have got Merzlikins as probable.
Okay.
And Bernier as likely.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Merzlikins is 0-4-3.
Terrible.
0-4-3.
Bad. It's funny, too. I mean, not to go off on a tangent. He's a guy who basically came over here and said, I don't want to play in Cleveland. Doesn't want to play with the AHL affiliate. Well, you might need a little bit of time there, bud. You might have to kind of get over it a little bit. By the way, they're cycling through, and the hard part is finding out. The other night, I said, Tampa is just not playing good. They've been putting the reverse puck lines up here. I played Washington on the reverse puck line, plus 375 at Tampa. And they won the game. They got a couple empty netters, but I'm watching the end of the game with great interest, right? And they get the second empty netter, and I think they won it 5-2. And all of a sudden, bam, they cut to the dads in the suite, clinking beer bottles. I'm like, had I known that, I would have bet more. I mean, I just did it because I knew Tampa's not playing good. And then, of course, Washington spits the bit in the game against Columbus. But like you said, Columbus has got something against them. So the dad strip's a real thing. And, oh, by the way, throw this out. Vegas dads will be with them Thursday and Saturday. They play Vancouver and San Jose. First 2 years of their existence, the Golden Knights are 4-0 with the dads in tow. Oh, good one. There you go. All right. So, wait, am I seeing, is this Ottawa's dad's trip?
It could be.
I think it is. And they got trucked last night, 6-1. I think they are. Yeah, they are. Okay. Well then.
Okay. See, no, they didn't really throw the dads much of a bone there, playing back-to-back nights.
No, but it's Florida, I guess.
Well, I guess, but I guess what you did is they hopped on the plane and they had a day in Florida before a game. Usually, The dad's thing is the day that they spend with the families, the day between games. I mean, the optimum thing is it's a 2-game, 3 or 4 day hop where they get to actually have a day with the dads. I mean, so now you're making them go through the overnight flight and all that nonsense. So maybe they had too much fun on the day on the front end of the trip with their dads. And oh, by the way, do we know who was the goalie? Let me see what the goalie's going to be tonight. See, that's the other thing you got to know about the dad's trip.
Both guys are going to play, right?
Both guys are going to play. I'll always go back. In the beginning, it was the first year of the Golden Knights' existence, and I've been humping this dad's thing now for about 4 years. And that means nothing. Does it? Okay, talk to me later. Right? It was 21-3 the 1 year road teams of the games I could find out about it, and 90% of them are dogs. Some of them significant dogs. That Vegas the 1 year, and Fleury was hurt, and at the time they had Subban and Lagasse, and they went and played Nashville, and it was Subban going against his brother, and Vegas won the game, and Subban played really good. So everybody's like, oh, you got to come right back with Subban, because there's no way. I said, Lagasse's playing. And everybody fought me like, no, it's absolutely going to be Subban. I go, no. Lagasse has a dad too. And that kid went 500 for them playing 14 games and saved their season in the year they went to the Cup. On the dad's trip, the other goalie has a dad too. So on the dad's trip, the backup is absolutely playing. That will happen until the end of time.
Yeah, for sure. Washington on theirs too, from what it looks like here. Or they just got off of it, one of the two.
Well, no, they won the first game.
Okay.
They won the first game at Tampa with the dads and walked into the Blue Jackets buzzsaw last night. And, oh, by the way, the Tom Wilson thing at the end of that game, that was weird. Let's see what the league does with that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But I can't find anything about Dallas, but Dallas plays Tampa Bay and Florida in a back-to-back Thursday, Friday. So I don't know if Dallas already had theirs. But again, honestly, back-to-backs are tough.
I think they really have. It's funny. I mean, they're so cryptic anyway with the, guy gets, loses 11 teeth, and it's an upper body injury. Like, well, we all saw it. They're so cryptic with everything. But I think they've kind of gone out of their way where no one knows. And it's all of a sudden these guys show up at the game. The Sharks come in here. Nobody knew. Sharks won the game here, and all of a sudden there's the dads walking in the locker room. Nobody even knew they were here. So it's I don't know if the league's told them, don't be telling everybody the dads are going.
I don't know, maybe.
Because it's hard to find out.
It is. It's tough. It definitely takes some digging. One last thing I want to ask you about here, because like I said, I don't think we're going to be on the air next Tuesday, and wouldn't matter anyway, but what about heading into the holiday break? I mean, are there any angles you look to play? Teams have 3 days off, so everyone gets to go home, at least home to the city they play in for the holidays. Do you have any angles about that you kind of look at?
Not so much angles on that. What I would watch for, what do we have? 2 days left until the holiday trade freeze. And I don't know if the Hall thing opens some things up. It's not going to shock me if there's not a couple of more deals here in the next day or two before the holiday freeze. But I will tell you, I think we're rapidly approaching the time where after the holidays, the games change. The points in January and February matter as much as the ones in October and November. But, the reality of it is you start looking at the standings and where you sit, and all of a sudden a 2-2 game with 9 minutes to go, teams are playing it off the glass and out. They're protecting the point. And and coaches then a little deeper, the closer you get to the trade deadline, they start to implement the style they want to play. There's stages of an NHL season. I do think after the holidays, what is always the case is, buyer beware a little bit on the overs. The game should tighten up dramatically.
Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. How can people check out those two shows of yours, Brian?
All right, bud. Yeah, no, we got today will be fun. Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, noon to 2 Pacific time, kshp.com. I'll put the show links out on my Twitter at Brian Blessing. Today we'll have Tony Neville from Treasure Island, Bruce Marshall, our good friend from the Gold Sheet. We love the show. We have great sportsbook directors, get information from that side of the counter each and every day. And Vegas Hockey Hotline, if you're a hockey fan, yeah, there's a lot of Golden Knights talk, but a lot of talk about sports betting and what's going on around the league. Today, the Golden Knights are playing the Minnesota Wild, so we call on our good friend up in Minnesota, Pat Micheletti. If you're a hockey fan, think you really enjoy it. And we'll be doing videos for you, my friend.
Yes, sir. Definitely looking forward to that. Make sure you head on over, check out our Bang the Book YouTube page. You'll get those NFL preview videos there from Brian for this week. Get Brian Blessing at Brian Blessing on Twitter, kshp.com to hear Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Always appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for joining me. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to you and yours, and we'll talk to you here probably in a couple weeks.
All right, bud. And if, like I said, hey, I'm there for you. You want to figure some out next week? We'll figure it out. Whatever you got to do. But if I don't talk to you and the listeners, I hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all that good stuff, and keep cashing tickets.